Renaissance art by Toby, with some help from Sunith and Asa. So first we're going to talk about Italian Renaissance art. So the Renaissance, artly, started in Italy, and it was the first part of the Renaissance, called the Early Renaissance, was initiated by painters like Giotto. I think that's how that's pronounced. And there was a heavy focus on geometric and proportional understanding of the human body. So math was really important for trying to create the perfect human body, which was one of the goals of the Italian Renaissance. And this was how accuracy was achieved through the mathematical precision rather than perfect details, as the paintings were attempted in Northern Renaissance. And there was a shift from religious themes to humanist ones, which culminated during the High Renaissance period. So we're going to talk about 3 High Renaissance artists. The first is Leonardo da Vinci. So Leonardo da Vinci, on top of being an artist, was a scientist and an inventor. And he studied the human form in great depth. One of his biggest focuses was anatomy, and he used his study of anatomy to create the perfect human form, which you can see on the right, which is the Mona Lisa. All right. Next slide. Michelangelo was another important High Renaissance artist. He was a sculptor and a painter. He's probably most famous for the Sistine Chapel painting, which is on the right, on the bottom. And he was very interested in humanism, and he wanted to portray the human form as perfect. So he mixed religion and scientific thought in his art. There were a lot of religious themes, but with a mathematical, scientific basis. And finally, Raphael was considered the culmination of Renaissance ideas. He came after Leonardo and Michelangelo, and he learned a lot from both of these artists. He was also interested in the school of Neoplatonist thought, which was a revival of classical ideas. And this, combined with the humanism that was really important during this period, produced these works that he is most known for, such as the School of Athens on the bottom left.
So another major part of the Renaissance was the Northern Renaissance. These paintings were famous for having great detail. This was done not by mastery of the laws of perspective and proportion, but by empirical observation of visual reality and the accurate portrayal of details. So unlike the Italian Renaissance, it didn't use geometric understanding to achieve detail, and instead just used exact copy of detail. And the most famous Northern Renaissance painter was probably Jan van Eyck of the Netherlands, and one of his most famous paintings was Giovanni Arnolfini and His Bride, which is pictured on this slide. So here you can see that the painting has tons of detail. If you actually look on the right, that is a close-up of the mirror, and you can see that he's even drawn what the painting looks like from the back. So you can see the great attention to detail, even though it doesn't contain the mastery of perspective that you see in the Italian Renaissance paintings. So Lucas Cranach the Elder, he was born in the late 15th century and was a major part of the German Renaissance. In addition to doing paintings, he also was a printmaker of woodcuts and engravings. Most of his famous paintings are portraits, since he was a court painter for the Electors of Saxony. So he painted a lot of German princes and Protestant Reformation leaders. He also made many religious paintings, including St. Helena with the Cross, which is at the Cincinnati Art Museum. So here's that picture, and this shows, it also shows how a lot of the Renaissance art was devoted to religion. And
okay, so although the Renaissance was mostly in Italy, especially at this time, it also spread to Spain and France. So Spanish Renaissance art also underwent huge changes during this time. So while it was similar to art found in Italy, it was less advanced because unlike in Italy where there were people like the Medici family, there were not many wealthy patrons in Spain to finance these projects. So like 2 types of art that developed this time were Mannerist and Baroque. Of course, these were somewhat different than in Italy, but like Mannerist art in general was considered for like the elite, and it usually featured like strange images, like you're not exactly sure what the picture is of. and it like exaggerates human appearance, so it's not completely realistic. And then Baroque art in Spain at the time usually involved religion and were commissioned by Catholic monarchs. So you can see, so the picture on the left is an example of Mannerist art, and like as I said, you could see the guy's probably dying, but you don't know exactly what's happening in the picture, and his like limbs and like his legs, they're exaggerated. And then on the right is an example of a Baroque painting at the time. It's just a detailed painting of a pope. Okay, so Renaissance art also spread to France, and it first began to flourish in 1515 under Francis I. So like mainly in France, one type they also had a Baroque period, which was very similar to one in Spain, but instead of like mostly Catholic things, it featured more French things. And so artists such as Simon Vogt began this. And then other than that, there's many different types of paintings like arose, such as mural paintings and altarpieces, and they're mostly of Louis XIV, or the Sun King, as people of France called him. And so you can see on the left, that's a picture of Louis XIV. They try to portray him as like a war hero, like being really like brave. And then on the right, that's on the Palace of Versailles, the ceiling. It's a mural piece of different parts of Louis XIV's life.
Okay. Mannerism was an artistic style that predominated in Italy. It started in Florence and Rome and spread to northern Italy. Eventually, it spread to Central and Northern Europe. It lasted from the end of the High Renaissance in the 1520s to the beginning of the Baroque style, which was around 1590. The term was first used to define 16th century artists who were followers of Renaissance masters. It originated as a reaction to High Renaissance artists such as Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo.
Mannerist art is characterized by artificiality. The mannerism that developed in Rome before 1527 became most influential for artists that followed. Painters deliberately distorted the rules of proportion by painting elongated figures and oddly shaped human bodies. For example, the characters in paintings had unrealistically long limbs, strange body positions, and facial features.
Mannerist art conveyed suffering in a strong emotional atmosphere. It was known for having decorative arrangements of forms and a flat background with indeterminate dimensions. Mannerist art's spiritual intensity, experimentation with form, and elegance made it an attractive style during this time period.
Some Mannerist artists were Sofonisba and Golis. I don't know how to say that. You can read it. So one of the most important ones was El Greco because he was a Spanish Mannerist painter. He wasn't originally from Spain, but he moved to Spain and changed his name to El Greco. And he kind of adapted to their culture, and that was portrayed in his paintings. Another famous Mannerist artist was Jacopo da Oromo, and he was from Italy, and a lot of the Mannerist painters were from Italy.
Here are just some examples of El Greco's artwork. And then Sofonisba.
That's it.
Okay, this is Baroque style art. Baroque style art replaced the Mannerism movement and was embraced by the Catholic Reform movement. It sought to bring together the classical ideals of Renaissance art with the spiritual feelings of the 16th century religious revival. And its main purpose, it was used to heighten emotional intensity, show power, and arouse emotion. So the artist that I was using for this is Peter Paul Rubens, and he was a prolific artist, an important figure that spread Baroque style in Italy to other parts of Europe, and he sought to embody the surge of power and dramatic effect He used violent emotions, light and shadows, heavily fleshed nudes, and rich, sensuous pigments converged to express intense emotions. And that's a picture of him at the bottom. And when this is one of his paintings called Samson and Delilah. Just a history of the painting. Samson is a Jewish hero that falls in love with Delilah and eventually tells her that his power comes from his hair, which is that part of Baroque style where it's searching for power. Delilah is bribed to letting a servant cut his hair, and then Philistine guards come and arrest him. And you can just see from the shadows in the painting, and then there are the guards in the back corner. And then these are just some more paintings of Baroque style, so you can see how they're pretty intense. That's it.
Okay, so I have done French Classicism. And what is it? So it occurred in the second half of the 17th century, and it was rejected. It rejected the Baroque style, and basically the Baroque style was it focused on embracing the Catholic Reform movement. And the French remained committed to the classical values of the High Renaissance. And the Baroque seemed to be overly showing impassioned, so the French Classicism focused on clarity, simplicity, balance, and harmony. There was also a shift in French society from chaos to order, and it rejected the emotionalism and high drama. And it was still used some Baroque conception of grandeur, so it used some royalty aspects, and an example of this noble subjects. So one of the painters that was influenced by French Classicism is Nicolas Poussin. He was born June 1594 and died on November 1665. And his paintings resemble clarity, logic, and order. And his main focus was order. And he painted mostly classic mythology or religious subjects. And one of his paintings is Venus and Adonis. Well, the original painter was Titian, I guess, from the 16th century, but it was decided to do another one replica. And as you see, there's a balanced color control, and there's lots of detail, and it brings out the harmony, and there's a use of brown tones resembling the French Classicism.
Okay, so this is Rococo art of the 18th century. It's also known as late Baroque because it shares a lot of the characteristics with Baroque art. So some characteristics of Rococo art. It first emerged in the 18th century. There's an emphasis on grace and gentle action. A lot of the artists like to use curves in their art. They rejected strict geometric patterns, so there aren't a lot of straight lines, very rectangular type of shapes. It was highly secular, so that means that there wasn't a lot of religious content, and this reflected a lot of the shift toward a more secular society in the 18th century. So a few Rococo artists. This is on your left, is Antoine Watteau. He was one of the more famous Rococo artists. You can see his painting, The Embarkation on Cythera, and it's a very secular painting. It's a party of nobles going down to the river to have a good time. And on your right is a painting by Francois Boucher. And this is just a painting of Madame de Pompadour. And you can see she's reading a book and just kind of lounging. Rococo architecture was often coupled with Baroque, so this created a new style of architecture. And here you can see Balthasar Neumann's Imperial Hall of Residence, and this is in Germany. So you can see a lot of the very ornate architecture here, and a lot of very soft, light colors, and a lot of gold. Yep. And now, we have a video for you.
Hi, Dr. Betty Brown here. The topic is Rococo art. The Rococo period is a period in European history that follows upon the end of the Baroque period and comes all the way up into the time of the revolutions that ripped through Europe and the Americas. We're not sure about that name Rococo. It's possible that it has to do with irregularly shaped pearls, but whatever the cause of its title, Rococo art is one which was characterized by intentional visual redundancy. Lots of ornate elaboration, lots of gold, lots of lacy filigree created by stucco and dripping down the sides of the buildings. Rococo painting was just about as full of frou-frou as the architecture, and there were lots of very pink, very dimply, budded nudes, and lots of very romantic paintings. There's a notorious one of a bishop swinging a young lady in a swing with her lover laying in the grass below her and getting a straight shot up her skirt. That kind of titillating art characterized the Rococo and led to a lot of reactions against it in an alternative, very austere style called neoclassicism.
What is neoclassicism? Well, it's a Western movement in visual arts, literature, theater, and music that sort of went back to old, more classical themes from Greece or ancient Rome. And it was greatly stimulated through the 18th century by scientific interests, and in particular the rediscoveries of Roman cities like Herculaneum and Pompeii.
Painting and sculptures of neoclassical works, paintings and sculptures were serious, unemotional, and sternly heroic. Painters portrayed characters from Old Greek and Roman classical literature, and outfits, locations, and backgrounds were all historically accurate. Compared to Baroque style, neoclassical art was more restrained compared to the more theatrical old genres. And it was also much less whimsical than the indulgent Rococo style.
So there were four major artists of the neoclassical era, and one of them was Jacques-Louis David, and he was an influential French painter. And the painting just to the right is the Les Sermons de Caracas in 1784, and it's three sons joining the military, and they're telling their father, and it's all serious. And then Jean Angueste Dominique Ingres, we'll see a painting by him later on, but he was also a French painter.
So Antonio Canova was an Italian neoclassical sculptor, and he is most famous for his marble sculptures. And then Angelica Kauffman was an Australian neoclassical painter who had a successful career in London and Rome. And she was one of the two founding female members of the Royal Academy in London.
Yeah. That's it.
Writing in this wasteland, that's an everyday hustle. I hustle every day in life, see this life, love it right. Always think of how to show it like I'm Bertrand Russell. Man, love them ciphers, I'm an artist. We're a prophet of this nonsense, it's just constant in our head. I think it's called a puzzle. Through a story, art that made a story, showed us in the glory. In the dreary time, it'd be fine, art to get us through it. Lots of periods to talk about, better get that straightened out. First it was LaSalle where cavemen had a residence. Then it was the Renaissance. Open minds, blank times, blank styles, blank lines, blank canvas listening. And at the time Europe once again began to glisten It went from famine, blind faith, and some superstition to reason, pride, and aesthetics having an ignition. And most of what was painted, drawn, or sculpted at this time was probably envisioned with all those ideals in mind. Donatello, Sandro Botticelli, Michelangelo, and Raffaelli, and Ike da Vinci, and some Brunelleschi. Motto and two-point perspective came before Machiavelli. Movements are just more than names that no one forgets to tell me. Ain't no limits to it. It's the trip, especially when you move a bit past these times. I should film you through it. Paint a pic, put a frame on it, name that trick, and that's the Renaissance. Ain't nobody gonna claim on it. You say you got that brush, but I've never seen you paint. You say you got that chisel, but I've never seen your clay. You say you in the circle, but I've never seen you wave. You say you full of fire, but nobody feels the same. Say you got that brush, but I've seen you paint. You say you got that chisel, but I've never seen your clay. You say you in the circle, but I've never seen you wave. You say you full of fire, but nobody feels the same. Fast forward like 200 years, nothing was the same. The mannerisms were gone and the broken movement came. Through reconciling classics and romantics it gained fame. But you're probably wondering who it was that gave it name. Taking time while sculpting, man, this is my endorsement. Taking time with brushes, man, this is why I'm important. I remember peephole readings for the vines that he portrait. Through light shadows and heavily flesh nude and important. And forget hops and need options, forget simple, I'm complex. Your favorite artist's corpses couldn't measure my importance. My mind is out in importance, but it ain't got endorsement. Her people want reinforcements, so I'll be talking Europe. You say you got that brush, but I've never seen you paint. You say you got that chisel, but I've never seen your clay. You say you in the circle, but I've never seen you wave. You say you full of fire, but nobody feels the same. You say you got that brush, but I've never seen you paint. You say you got that chisel, but I've never seen your clay. You say you in the circle, but I've never seen you wave. You say you full of fire, but nobody feels the same.